If there's one thing I've learned from my years of restaurant experience, it's this. Fresh, local ingredients are extremely important if you want to eat healthy, delicious food. I'm Sebastiaan Zijp, chef and farmer at The Farmer's Hands. Welcome to the Farm Fresh Table, farm-to-table cooking in Buncombe County. In today's episode, we're headed to the Weaverville Tailgate Market to connect with Dillingham Family Farm and Ivory Family Farm. A tailgate market is one way to taste the flavors of the season. These markets bring the farmers to one place to connect with the community. You can find an array of produce, farm-raised meats, fresh seafood, dairy, and local handmade products, and even get a chance to talk with farm owners. So tell me a little bit about Dillingham Family Farm.
Our farm, we've been in the same location in the high mountains of Buncombe County for over 200 years now. And I'm the 8th generation, my sons are the 9th. So
that's great.
We've been there for a long time, and during that whole time we've always either been farming or in the logging business, usually both a little bit, and we still farm, raise grass-fed beef.
Is that your focus, is grass-fed beef? Or?
That is mine, yeah.
Right.
I also operate a small portable sawmill a little bit, but my main purpose is the grass-fed beef business. So.
Tell me a little bit more about grass-fed beef versus grain-fed, or a little bit the differences in there and why you've chosen to do grass-fed over other options.
Well, the grass-fed one is just logic. You know, God gave cows 4 stomachs to take grass and turn it into meat for us to eat. So it's out there, growing. You know, we get the rain like we've had today and the sunshine, and it makes good grass, and so we can make good beef. And it's a better quality product in terms of health. The fat that's produced is so much more beneficial for you. Actually lubricates our heart, our valves.
Versus the corn-fed beef or other kind of grain-fed beef.
Where it's blocking your arteries over time.
It's the opposite of.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Right. And the grass-fed beef is a fairly scientific product to produce. You got to learn how the grass grows, how your soil biology acts, the things that go on underneath the grass, and it really makes a difference when you graze the grass.
Versus
you can stick cows out on grass and they're technically grass-fed, but they might not be a good quality product.
Gotcha.
So to do it well, you really need to learn the stage at which you graze the grass.
We have pork, grass-fed beef, free-range chicken, eggs, and we've got some turkey products.
Will you be doing more turkeys in the fall? Are you doing your focus for turkeys is
we
around?
have fresh turkeys every Thanksgiving.
For Thanksgiving, and that's something people can pre-order? Is that how that works usually?
It is.
Okay, that's exciting. And as far as your beef, you have all cuts people would be looking for: steaks, ground beef.
Everything they can get in the grocery store and better.
We're looking for some short ribs for today.
Okay.
I'd love to take a look.
All right. The good thing about all of our meat, beef and pork, is that we know exactly what's in it and what's not in it.
Right.
So it doesn't have anything that's going to be greasy.
Right.
Everything is so lean compared to what you get in the grocery store.
And as you find people, that's what people are really looking for in their beef products.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I like.
Our hamburger is 90-10.
That's great. So tell me a little bit about Ivy Creek Family Farm.
Ivy Creek Family Farm, well, we're in our 10th year of farming, and that's been a really fun, adventurous ride. And I think if you talk to most people in local agriculture, what you would end up hearing is we started with an idea and the community embraced it and just said, keep doing it, and keep doing it, and keep doing it at every step of the way. So I think we started off on borrowed land that was about 1/4 of an acre in someone's backyard. We did that for 2 years before we found our own land out in Barnardsville. Now we grow on about 3.5 acres of our land and about 5 acres of our neighbor's land. We have a farm stand at our farm that's just a self-serve thing. Actually, Dillingham Family Farm also sources
Oh, great.
Their product is also in our,
And that's
our farm stand.
a self-serve
Yeah, it's just
honor system kind of
exactly.
farm
So
stand?
it's a really nice thing for when you live out in the community, 15 minutes away from the grocery store, and you're like, oh, someone wants to come over for dinner. You don't want to have to run all the way into town.
And
so,
they just stop by yours and get everything they need.
And then you end up seeing neighbors come by. So for us, we had a dream that we could build community through food, and it's really been wonderful to see that manifest in front of our eyes. So we raise produce. That's what we do.
That's your focus? Mostly is produce?
Yeah, so we raise organic produce. We don't go through any certifications in that endeavor. I think we try to meet and exceed any of those things. And because we're mainly a retail farm, it gives our customers an opportunity to vet out the quality of our produce and in that to learn, wow, if you get to know your farmer, this is a powerful thing. You know, there's one thing to go into a store and to buy something on a label.
Right.
It's another thing to know your farmer's name, to come out and walk their fields.
And see exactly where it's coming from and really have that connection
It's
built
a pretty
that.
powerful thing.
It is.
So that's not
absolutely
accessible in a lot of communities, but Western North Carolina seems to be one of those communities where it is accessible, and so it's fun to see that build. Hopefully that can be a model for other communities around the country or the region or whatever.
That'd be great. Well, we'll definitely have a bunch of those. We have a bunch of these beautiful beets here.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have a bunch of these carrots.
Great.
And yeah, I think that'll do it for today.
Wonderful.
So we're done here at the market. We've got our short ribs, beets, carrots, and onions, and we're gonna head back to the kitchen. With these ingredients, I'm going to make a roasted beet salad with feta cheese. We're gonna braise the beef short ribs in red wine. And when we get back to the farm, we're gonna pick some green beans and we're gonna cook them up with toasted almonds and lemon juice. I love beets. Beets are great. People think that beets get a bad rap, and I think they're super delicious, and we're going to teach a really simple, fun, delicious way to make them. I find roasting beets brings out the most amount of sweetness and really brings out all the amazing, delicious flavors that beets have. And it's a really simple step to do. It's really easy. We have our oven set to 400 degrees, and we're going to have our beets. We're going to take off the greens and just a little bit of this root end. You can hold on to these greens. You can saute these like you would any kind of sauteed green. Spinach would be probably the closest comparable green to beet greens. I would remove most of this stem and you just saute just the leaves. All right, so we're going to put our beets into a shallow roasting dish of any kind, anything that is good for the oven. And we're going to add just a little bit of water. The water helps steam them, and it will also help you be able to peel them really easily later on once they come out of the oven. We're going to liberally season all of that with some salt and pepper. I like roasting them with a little bit of fresh thyme, but you can add any kind of herbs to them that you like. Rosemary, thyme, sage, all those kind of savory herbs really work well. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I think it adds a nice amount of flavor to it. And then we're gonna take our pan, just gonna wrap it really tightly with some tin foil. And these will take about an hour in the oven. After they come out of the oven, use a little paring knife and poke the beets. And if you feel any resistance or if the center feels kind of tough, put them back in for another 15 minutes or so, and then they should be good to go. So it's been about an hour on our beets. They're gonna be very hot at this stage. So you'll wanna take this tin foil off and just let them steam just for a little bit, for about 15-20 minutes. That way they'll be cool enough to handle, and then you can peel them. Peeling them is really, really simple at this point, just because we have that liquid in there, that moisture. The peel will just kind of rub right off with your fingers. If you don't want your fingers to turn purple, you can put on a pair of gloves, or you can use a kitchen towel to rub it off, but then you'll end up with a purple kitchen towel. I don't mind the little bit of purple on my fingers. So as you can see, this will be super easy. That skin just peels right off. It just slips right off with just a little bit of resistance. And this is a really, really nice way to do beets. I know people tend to not enjoy beets, and if you roast them like this, cook them, it's a super simple process to do. You can do it ahead of time at any point. Just wrap them up, stick them in the oven for an hour, and they're good to go. They end up being super delicious, really sweet. So these beets do really well marinated, and you can cut beets any way you like. For this, I'm gonna cut them into little rounds. I think they look really nice, and then you can plate them in a kind of a flat way, and you can scatter the cheese and everything that we're going to be putting on top after, and it'll look really, really pretty. So we'll just slice them in nice thick slices, 1/4 inch slices, I suppose. And we'll put them back in our bowl. We're going to add a little bit of balsamic vinegar. You can use any kind of vinegar you like. I find, especially with the dark red beets, that sweetness with the balsamic is super delicious. But if you like a red wine vinegar, you can use that, or a sherry vinegar works really well. So we're just going to put a little bit in there. We're also drizzled just a little bit of olive oil on there. And we just give it a little bit more salt and another couple turns of pepper, just to make sure they're very well seasoned. And then we're just going to give this a little toss. They're ready to go now. If you want to, you could serve them right away, or you can let this marinate overnight, and they'll just get more and more delicious, and that vinegar and olive oil will really get inside the beets and become super delicious. We're basically just going to put these beets on our plate, spread them out a little bit. We've got that beautiful red color on that white plate, is really nice. And we've got some sliced almonds that we're going to scatter on top, just for a little bit of crunch and a little bit of, beets and nuts work really well together. And then beets also enjoy some bit of salty cheese. You can use goat cheese if you want, but in our case we're going to use just a little bit of crumbled feta. And we're just going to scatter a little bit of that crumbled feta on top of there as well. And you can use any kind of cheese. If you like Parmesan cheese, you can use that, but I really suggest using either a goat cheese or a feta cheese. And if you wanted to, we could take just a little bit of fresh parsley or any other kind of fresh herb. Chives would work, a little bit of basil would be really good. And we're just going to slice that up, and we're just going to scatter that over the top as well. And it's super simple, basically 3-ingredient salad. And if you make this for your friends, they'll all say, I had no idea beets could be this good.
For additional episodes of FarmFreshTable and more great original programming from Buncombe County, check us out at buncombecounty.org/BCTV or Charter Channel 192. Coming up, braised short ribs and lemony green beans.
So we have our beautiful beef short ribs from Dillingham Farm that we got yesterday at the farmer's market. Beef short ribs are nice big chunks of meat from the ribs of the cow. So you can see here are 2 big pieces of rib bone, and there's a nice cap of meat on there. These are an offcut or a tougher cut of meat, so they lend themselves to a long, slow cooking versus something quick like a steak. So what we're going to do with them today is we're going to braise them in red wine with onions, carrots, garlic, some thyme, a little tomato paste, and a little bit of beef broth. It takes a little bit of time to get everything into the pot, but once it's in there, it goes in the oven for about 3 hours, so it's a really nice, long, slow process. There's just a ton of flavor in cuts of beef that are not your fancy cuts, and they're also usually quite a lot cheaper than your fancy cuts of beef. But I find that with a little bit of energy, like what we're going to be doing today, a little bit of effort put into it, you end up with something that is even more flavorful than a steak, just a plain steak off the grill. So what we're going to do, we're going to start by searing our short ribs. I'm going to season them on both sides with some salt and pepper. We get a little olive oil in our pan. Start with a relatively generous amount. A technique for getting a really nice sear on something is once you put it in your pan, make sure your pan is nice and hot to begin with. You can kind of tell by a little bit of shimmering happening in your olive oil, but a major thing is to not move it. People tend to want to stir things a lot more than they really need to be, and especially if you want to get a really nice sear on a piece of meat or a piece of fish especially, you want to put it in there and just leave it alone for a good, this will probably take about 5 minutes or so per side to get a really nice sear on there. So while our short ribs are searing, like I said, this is going to take about 5 minutes or so, we can slice up the vegetables that we'll be using in the braise. In this case, we're going to be using onions. We got these beautiful spring onions from Ivory Creek Family Farm yesterday, as well as these lovely carrots, and we've got some garlic from them as well. So we'll be cutting these in relatively thick slices. We will be leaving all this vegetables in there, and they will be part of the sauce that ends up in there at the end of the cooking process. So we will be cutting these in a 1/4 inch or so slices. And for this batch, we're going to be using 1 onion. If you like your onions, you can use a few more, but I think 1 onion is plenty for this. Carrots, we're also going to slice about that same thickness. We don't want them to cook to death. We want there still to be a little bit of bite to them, a little bit of texture to them at the end of the 3-hour or so cooking process. And then we'll add some garlic as well. And here you can be as generous with as you want. I like a lot of garlic in everything I cook. So we'll be putting probably about 5 or 6 cloves of garlic in there. And these we'll just leave whole. They'll cook down gently, and we won't need to chop them up, but we will peel them. And there's a pretty easy, quick technique for that. You just lay them down and place your knife on top of the clove of garlic. Use the back of your hand and just give them a little crack. And then the peel slips right off. So our short ribs have a really nice sear on both sides. I think about 5 minutes per side or so. I'm going to be taking them out so we can sear off our vegetables. I'll just set these aside for a few minutes. And we're going to start with our onions and our carrots. We'll put our garlic in there a little bit later. We don't want that garlic to burn. It'll be really bitter. And just spread those out a little bit, and we'll let them take on just a little bit of color. So we've let our onions and our carrots saute for a few minutes. They've started taking on a little bit of color. At this point, we're going to add our crushed cloves of garlic. We're going to add a good tablespoon of tomato paste. This will add a nice flavor, and it will also thicken the sauce. It will thicken the sauce later. We're going to stir that around and cook that tomato paste in with the onions and the carrots for just about a minute. Oh man, that smells so good. So we've let this tomato paste cook for about a minute. And at this point, we're going to add our red wine, about 1.5 cups of red wine. And I'm using a Cabernet Sauvignon. A medium to heavy-bodied wine is good. Something that you would want to drink is what you would want to cook with. So we're going to add that to the pan. Stir it around just a little bit, and if there's any bits that have cooked onto the bottom of your pan, that's all really good, flavorful stuff. So at this point, you want to just scrape the bottom of your pan with your wooden spoon to work a little bit of that out of there into the sauce. In this dish, we're not going to reduce this wine at all. We don't necessarily, because it's been cooking in the oven for so long, we don't necessarily need to cook off the alcohol at this point. So we are going to add our fresh thyme to the pan. And then we're going to add our short ribs back and nestle them into that sauce a little bit. And we have a little bit of beef broth. You can use chicken broth as well, or you can use water. But beef broth is what I would suggest. It adds more of that richness, and it's, considering we're cooking beef, use the kind of broth that you're cooking the meat. So we're just going to use some of this beef broth, and we're not going to cover these short ribs. We're going to just fill it up till they're just about covered. So this is about a cup and a little bit. And then we're going to put a lid on top of this, and then the whole pot will go into a preheated 350-degree oven for between 2.5 and 3 hours. So a great side dish for our short ribs are green beans. We weren't able to find any at the farmer's market today, but we did have some growing in our garden, so these are some of our green beans. There's a lot of different ways you can cook green beans. In this case, we're going to blanch them, which means par cook them in heavily salted boiling water. And then we're going to saute them in a little bit of butter and finish with lemon juice, almonds, and chopped parsley. Super simple, really delicious. As everybody knows, summer green beans are prolific. We have them everywhere. And the step that we're going to do with the blanching is a good way to preserve them. You can blanch them, cool them down in ice water or just under cold running water till they're cool, and then you can actually put them in Ziploc bags and freeze them really well, and you can then use them from frozen all summer long into the fall. You can also pickle them really well, make dilly beans, which is super delicious. So all we're going to do here is we've got a pot of heavily salted water. It's at a rolling boil, so a heavy boil, and we're going to just drop our beans right in there. These will take 3 to 4 minutes to blanch, and then we're going to strain them. Our green beans are blanching. We're going to be finishing them in some butter with almonds, lemon juice, and chopped parsley. A step you can do ahead of time is you can do this blanching step ahead of time and cool them down, store them in your fridge, and you could just do this step a little bit later. We're going to be doing it basically directly from the blanching water to the pan. So I've got a saute pan heating up over medium-high heat. We're going to add about a tablespoon of butter to the pan. And we're just going to let that melt, and we're going to let this start to get just a little bit nutty. We don't want to turn it to brown butter, but we definitely want it to toast just a little bit. The almonds that'll go in there will help with that step as well. We'll have everything ready, so I'm going to, while that butter is melting, just roughly chop our parsley here. You can use other herbs for this, but chervil or chives would be really nice as well. But I really like just fresh chopped parsley as a green finishing herb. And we're gonna use some lemon juice for this. So the green beans have blanched for about 3 minutes now. I'm gonna strain them in the sink, and I'm just gonna let them drain while we finish the butter. So our butter is starting to take a little bit of a nutty smell. You really need to smell this. It's hard to visualize it. It's all about smell. And we're going to add a good pinch or two of sliced almonds to the pan. We're also going to be adding a good pinch of salt at this point and a couple turns of our peppermill. This is something that happens very quickly, so it's a good thing to keep your eye on this. Those nuts will burn quickly if you don't pay attention. So we've got a little bit of nice golden color coming onto these. So I'm going to leave them for about 10 more seconds while I go grab the green beans. And we did take the little stem end off these green beans earlier, so they're good to go. And if you need to string them, do that ahead of time as well, but these did not need to be. So we add our blanched green beans to the pan. Turn the heat down at this point. Just give them a little toss. Coat them in that really nice nutty butter. We'll add our parsley and our lemon juice. If you get a rogue seed in there, that's okay. Won't hurt anybody. Another quick toss. Our nice clean white plate for them. Then all we'll do is spread them on there. So because the short ribs do take approximately 3 hours to cook, it's something you want to plan ahead for. Like we did, we made a batch earlier, so you all don't have to watch a 3-hour video. Let's see how these babies look. Ooh. So these are going to be super, super tender after this very long cooking process. So my fork is actually not going to work for me. Take our ribs. Get these little thyme stems out of there. They're not all that delicious to eat. Get our other piece here. As you can see that after that long cooking process and with the tomato paste in there, the sauce is thickened really well. So we're just going to stir this a little bit, and then we're going to get so that sauce, yummy slow cooked onions, carrots, and garlic. I'm going to spoon all of that on top of our short ribs. And there we have our red wine braised short ribs. These are super delicious, really easy to make. They actually also get better with time, so if you want to make them, you can make them a couple days ahead and let them just cool in the fridge and then reheat them really slowly in a low 325 degree oven until they're nice and hot. They just get better and better. They also store pretty well in your fridge, so you can have them for a few days if you want to make a really big batch. And you could also make them and freeze this whole setup, which is also helpful for, you know, thinking ahead for meals. So we've got our beet salad with feta cheese, balsamic vinegar, and almonds on there. We've got our slow cooked braised beef short ribs in red wine with onions and garlic and carrots. Sauteed green beans, tossed in almonds, parsley, lemon juice, and butter. Well, it's time to eat. Thanks for joining us around the table.